Alright. Hey gang! This is a video I just wanted to make real quick based on something I've been thinking about, and mostly just a record for myself, but thinking people online might be interested, so why not let them see? This is made with as minimal editing as I can because I'm terrible at it, so apologies. So, Lego Castle. I've been getting really into it. I've been watching a lot of like Goldfire videos and a couple other. Oh, there's a few other. He's the one that comes to mind immediately. But I've been getting really into it on YouTube and I've been thinking about it a lot. So I think I'm going to try and get into it now as a 23-year-old, which is wild. Let's get started. So who am I? Well, I'm Mona. I used to collect Lego. Was never really a big castle fan. I'm also a dungeon master, as you might be able to tell by my DM screen. Oh, and I'm a huge lover of world building, which is really where I'm going to come through on this. So, why am I getting into castle now? I'm bored, and a little bit of a touch of the tism. And also, we've got implication that we might be getting new castle sets, which I'm super, super excited for. If you don't know, there's a little castle in the background of the Creator 3-in-1 that might imply that we're getting more. All right. So, what we're going to do first is I'm going to kind of lay out some basic lore ideas, kind of my take on the castle universe, and that's going to be this video. And then eventually, once I get some more stuff, I'm going to probably start looking into doing builds and making factions and stuff. But for now, just the castle universe. First question. This is a huge, huge one. How much fantasy am I going to go? So there's a lot of people online who do like very, very low fantasy. You know, the castle factions are just orders of knights fighting together. But I find that a little boring. Although it is very grounded. It's very easy to write for. It's very people kind of resonate with it really quickly. It also makes building easier, but it's a little limited. On the other hand, you could go really, really high fantasy and go dragons and wizards and all of these crazy, crazy powerful magics, which I think is also very fun, but it makes things a lot more complicated. It also lets me use the D&D minifigures, which are some of my favorite things to ever exist. If you have a Tasha that you don't want, please hit me up. I have been looking for a Tasha and not spending a stupid amount of money on her. But yeah, these are a little harder to keep grounded though. My solution? I'm going to do somewhere in the middle. It's going to be both about knights, but also about magic. And I want the magic to be a kind of inbuilt part of the world. It's part of the setting, not just things added on. You don't have a knight order and then like one wizard. The knights kind of have to deal with magic in the everyday. So this includes a world full of unique races, things like typical D&D races. And my focus as a writer is always going to be on characters. So I'm going to kind of hone in on individual characters' narratives. I'm going to be telling individual stories rather than huge long tales of battles. Although I might dabble in them too. So now for the biggest decision. What color heads am I going to use? So there's some pros and cons. Yellow, they're iconic. It's also the official color for Lego Castle. There's a lot of more options. But tan, more skin tone options. And I'm going to say it, I like a little bit variety in the skin tone. Lets me use the Lord of the Rings sets, things like the elves, which have the elf ears, which are really useful. And I have a lot of these from when I was a kid. You'll see a lot of my decisions are going to be informed by the Legos that I get, hopefully soon, from my parents that have been hiding away in the attic somewhere. I was a Star Wars girly. I played with every Star Wars Lego set. I had so many X-Wings. I was terrible with them. I remember my dad being very upset to find the Death Star being taken apart. I'm going to use the tan ones because it's better for me. I also like the look a little better. But I think the yellow heads I'm going to end up getting a lot because of how ordering Legos work or buying Legos works. So I'll probably use them here and there, but for the most part, I'm going to use like the tan, the brown, like the different skin tone heads. Next big question. What factions am I going to use? This is really important. From what I've seen, most creators online kind of use every faction. They'll use all the official ones. You see a lot of like the Falcons and the Lion Knights. There's way too many. So I'm going to kind of cut down to a couple and then build up over time. There's 3 categories to kind of think about: old factions, new factions, and special factions. Let's take a look at them. So the old factions are a pain to source. I would love to run Raven Knights or some of the cooler older factions, the fantasy era trolls, the Black Knights. Like they're really cool, but they're a pain to get the parts for. And I missed Lions and Falcons. They're kind of out now, so I can't really run them. So instead, I'm just going to pick one faction that I think will be relatively easy to source and the most fun to build with. And I'm going to choose the Wolfpack. You might have seen this one coming. They're really cool. I love the bandit theming. I think they're going to make the most interesting minifigures, and I think they're going to make the most interesting builds. And yes, because they're bandits, it's going to be super easy to source them and to build, to kind of spread them out throughout the pieces I own. As for the new factions, there are 4 current factions LEGO seems to be leaning into, hopefully into the new sets. They are the Horse Knights, Snake Knights, Kraken Knights, and Griffin Knights. I'm going to hopefully use all 4, but as of right now, I don't own any of them. So hopefully in the coming weeks, I can start picking up the sets with these guys in them. I know the Horse and the Snake Knights come in a 3-in-1 castle that I definitely want to pick up. And then the Krakens and the Griffins come in the the Gachapon machine, which is super cool, but not really a set that's my type. So I don't know how many of them I'm going to pick up. Okay. And then on to like extra factions. These are unique factions or factions not necessarily from Lego Castle. The dwarves. These are going to be super important. I think they're pretty easy to kind of build out of any pieces you have, the exception being you need the beards. But I don't think that's going to be a huge issue. I kind of want to use a lot of Lord of the Rings parts. I know they haven't made those in a while, but there's some sets coming out now, the Hobbit stuff, that I'm hoping to kind of pick some things up from. Orcs and Trolls. I know I have a couple of these in my old collection, and I'm so excited to use them. I also want to look into the CMF Orc and the CMF Goblins, because I think they're going to be fun to build with. Elves. I have a whole thing planned for elves. But definitely I'm going to be using some elves. And then as we go, I might pick up some more on the way. I think it was Goldfire did a really interesting video on making up factions, where he had the orc using Hagrid's body that was a monster hunter that I thought was super, super cool. And I want to kind of take from that. Moving on. Let's get into what my kind of specialty is, which is lore and world building. We're going to go very, very light on it today, but I'm hoping to make more of these in the future. Let's grab some basics. So, very, very basic outline, the races. I'm going to use the kind of Dungeons and Dragons template, which is that there's a lot of races, and they don't really exist in isolation. Some of them do, but there's lots of different kinds of people living in the towns and cities amongst each other. And then there are some exclusive, some isolationists. I'm also making a hard call that I'm not going to include evil races. So no traditional drow or like dark elf, at least that is explicitly evil. I find it very, very kind of icky. I know there are times where that kind of writing makes sense, but it's not my style. As for magic, I think we're gonna have multiple kinds of magic. In fact, I got a little chart. Oh, I'm in the way. Let me pull myself down. Okay. So, I think there's going to be 3 kinds of magic. They are faith, sorcery, and alchemy. Faith is your kind of religious magic, the kind of magic you see paladins and priests wielding. It's particularly weak, but it is capable of strong bursts of powerful magic. These are called miracles. Sorcery is your kind of traditional magic. It's casting from the mana in your body. It's more akin to what a wizard or a sorcerer might use in Dungeons and Dragons. This is more powerful, but is kind of at a baseline. There's not a huge variety. And then the last one is going to be alchemy, which, if you don't know me, I am an alchemy stan. I love alchemy. I pose myself as an alchemist. This is going to be based very much on traditional alchemy with a bit of magic thrown in, a bit of like witchcraft kinds of stuff, kind of real world magic. And this is going to be very, very powerful, but only if you can spend time. So if you are willing to spend the time and the resources, alchemy is the most powerful magic. Let me move myself back up. Okay. So all people are going to be able to reach all forms of magic. And the most powerful of wizards and mages have mastered 2 systems. I think mastering 3 is nearly impossible. But powerful mages have mastered 2 of them. Well, like most things, some people have a talent, but it is not actually connected to any biology, though some do believe it. Yes, some also believe that it is a magical gift bestowed by gods or through elven heritage. Okay. I have a really, really important secret to tell you. I need you to not say it to anyone else, okay? I don't like elves. I just can't stand them. They're boring, they're annoying. This is maybe the most important part of how I see fantasy, is that the elf, as most people write them, sucks. As I say it here, is nobody gets them. Most of the time you see an elf and they are just humans that are better at everything. And that's not interesting. Dwarves are interesting because they are strong in some aspects, weak in others. They have a culture that focuses on specific aspects. Like, they are very unique, but elves tend to just be like, I'm a human, but I'm good at magic, and I'm good at this, and I'm good at that. We're good at archery. Uh, to me, this is not interesting. I'm going to actually move myself again because I am in the way. I'm going to stay down here. I should have framed this better. I think it's kind of boring. So, when it comes to this, elves are going to be different. There I am. And I will say I do like Tolkien's elves. I think they serve a very important role in his setting, and they are very, very interesting in that context. But what happens is most people take them out of the context, and they become very, very boring. There's some nuance to this. I think elves can be done really interestingly as people who are just better. But to me, a good elf has some kind of unique quality. Frieren is going to be a huge, huge inspiration for this one. It's fucking incredible. And let's get into elves. So the big quality that I think we think of as elves is that they live for so long. If you knew someone who could live 1,000 years, they would be strange. They would not act the way you or I act. They would not think on time scales like us. To us, sitting in a room for an hour may be excruciating if there's nothing to be done. But to an elf, that would be nothing. It would be nothing. It would pass like the blink of an eye. Spending months or years working on a single thing would be like simple to them, where to us it is like a trait of dedication. Here they don't understand the human timescale. They see things on a more fundamental level. Reality is kind of more open to them because they have so much time in this world. And they would seem kind of alien. Again, Frieren, great show. Please watch it. It's phenomenal. So what do my elves look like? So to me, elves are an ancient people. They live in an extraordinarily long time. I haven't decided if they are immortal in this setting, but I may use it because I think it's an interesting trait for them. They live most of their lives totally isolated, spending all of their time working towards something. They will go out only very rarely to find food or to gather further materials for their trance, to continue practicing this craft or learning new crafts. I think of them kind of like dragons, in that they have this kind of innate thirst or hunger or like greed that drives them to learning new things. Where a dragon might have a hoard, elves want to gather information. And an important aspect of elves in my world is they're almost all dead. There are not many left. The ones that are left are very, very rare. Most people have not met an elf. And if you want a kind of touch point for this, they're going to be a little bit closer to Gandalf in Lord of the Rings than they are to Legolas. And that is from someone who does not know the Lord of the Rings very well. If I'm wrong, please tell me. But as I know, Gandalf is a kind of timeless being, uh, who's a timeless and unique being. That is what my elves are. Another aspect that's really important to my elves is that they crossbred like crazy. There are so many different people in the world who have some elven heritage, to the point where maybe most people have at least a little elf in them. This created the Elfkin, where the source of anyone with long ears in my setting is an elf, is elven blood. So goblins, orcs, and traditional half-elves, who we'll talk about later, are going to have these long pointed ears that are part of their elf origin. Yep, some people believe it brings them a natural talent for sorcery. I'm not sure about that yet. And some are even going to kind of choose to take deep pride in this elf nature. If you know Skyrim or the Elder Scrolls lore, the idea that the orc are the Ozimmer, they are a kind of elf, or even the dwarves in that setting are a kind of elf. That's kind of how I see the Elfkin, where it's a bunch of these different races are secretly a little bit elf, and that is kind of their connecting point. So on to those elves that have pride for their elf nature. We have the Elven Protectorate, which is a nation founded by humanoid or mostly human elfkin, based entirely on their elven heritage. They're based kind of on the traditional high elf, and they exclude the lower elfkin. Very classic isolationist, kind of supremacist. Very separate from society. Some lore, they're built into the Elfwoods, Elder Elm. It houses many elven artifacts and historical materials. They live within a location traditionally associated with the elves of old, before they were wiped out. And some visual, I think I'm going to use a lot of the kind of Lord of the Rings elves. I really like the idea of, I think I say it here, of the elk and the elm, the elm tree and the elk animal being very prominent symbols. I think they have a very nice kind of synergy in the way that elm leaves grow out. Reminds me of elk antlers. I think they're unique symbols to use for the elves in this setting. All right, we're done talking about elves. Let's talk about the other factions. First off, knights. So the Griffins. They give me very, very strong Roman vibes, and they seem to me to have a connection with the Kraken Knights, at least from them being in the same set. So I'm going to run with that. And let's see. Yes. I'll do some narration for you. Founded amongst the remains of the dead empire, a coalition of merchants gathered power on the coast of Wings, spreading across the windless sea, incorporating a number of coastal cities. Coming into conflict with a band of pirates far more dangerous than most, they called upon the remnants of an ancient order to form the head of their new military. Thus, the Griffins of Silver Wing took to the sea. So that would be the Griffin Knights themselves. I like the idea of them being kind of Venice, if you know your history of this like trading empire running this inland sea. Throw a little bit of Byzantine in for things like Greek fire and unique kind of aspects there. And of course the Roman inspiration. I think they use a very Roman tactic. If you don't know, the Romans and the Greeks, when they fought on the sea, the kind of battle tactic was often just to dock two ships next to each other and then you fight on board the ships. Very, very different than we think of like pirates. So I think they are kind of stuck in the past in that way. And that's why they're having such a hard time with our next group, the Krakens. Oh, back to narration nerd. The fierce warriors of the south once ruled the fertile coast facing into the windless sea. Centuries ago, they were unlanded by mighty northern conquerors. Those that escaped with their leadership fled by sea, pursued on their journey by conquerors' grand fleet. They were saved by a miraculous storm. In the storm, they saw a beast larger than any before, whose tentacles grasped and destroyed their attackers. Making land on an island protected by high cliffs and dangerous waters, the people named that beast Kraken, or Savior. So, like a lot of people, I really love the idea of these folks being pirates or Viking-like faction. I think it really goes for their aesthetic. I'm going to go much more pirate. I also really like kind of filling them in this world's kind of equivalent to North Africa. I think would be really, really interesting. You might have noted that their story kind of references northern invaders. That is the empire of old. That would be kind of like the Romans. I also really like the idea that there are Vikings in this setting, and the Vikings were a close ally of theirs for a long time, which would be why they look so Norse. And the Kraken Island itself is going to be an island at the edge of this windless sea, which is what brings them into conflict with the Griffin merchants. It's how they get dragged into the fight. All right. On to snakes. Founded by a persecuted people, the snakes of Blackgrove defend the defenseless. Mages in the age of old were under scrutiny for the practice of magic deemed unholy by the church. Fleeing to the Black Grove, the mages formed a defensive force and offered amnesty to those unjustly persecuted. Now, decades later, the snakes still honor their founders' ideals by serving justice wherever they go. I really like these guys. I think they look really cool. I love the minifigure in the new set. But I hate that everyone thinks they're evil. I think making them evil would be so boring because they got such a cool design. I love their little shields. And I love the color purple. So they're going to be a little more purple than usual. And they're also going to be good guys. So they are kind of a wizard mage order. They have both regular knights and knights inclined with magic. They're also a smaller group, coming from this small order the small area, who travel quite a bit. This makes them highly adaptable and highly valuable. Yep. Despite their small size, their connection with powerful forms of magic, being alchemy and sorcery, makes them very, very valuable allies. Onto their quote-unquote enemies, the Horse Knights. These are the snake's biggest rivals, and they are also magically attuned, this time with holy magic. So these guys are going to be connected to the church that used to hate mages, that used to push the mages away, that ended up creating the snakes in the first place. Sponsored by the reorganized church, the horsemen of Whitestone Keep have taken to the roads to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Ruled over by their king, a devout man, the horsemen are urged to serve at the church's request, often attracting priests and paladins to serve among their ranks. Considered heroes amongst the people, horsemen often herald the end of a town's troubles with a special love of their cavalry. Having a horse in town is often euphemism for a location being safe from bandits. So they're kind of a paladin-y order. I'm not super settled on these guys. I think I mentioned that here. I like the idea of them and the snakes being rivals, but not really enemies. I like the idea that they they butt heads a lot, but when push comes to shove, they're willing to work together to fight off a greater evil, which I compare to Sonic and Shadow. I am a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan. Of course, it's going to show up here somewhere. Fun fact, the only Lego sets I have in my apartment right now are Sonic sets. On to everyone else. The Wolfpack. Years of poor harvest and harsh winters once turned the starving people of Wolf's Rest to crime. Traveling south into the woodlands, they found poorly defended towns and villages were easy pickings. Those they could not raid, they would rob on the long roads. While some did return to their farms, many stayed in the south and continued their criminal lives. Thus, the Wolfpack was born. Taking the guardian spirit of their homeland as their symbol, they menace the woodlands with their name alone. So they are kind of bandit kings. They are the most powerful bandit organization. I like the idea that they kind of like a gang would control smaller crime. They have their hands in a lot of smaller groups. And getting in direct conflict with them is a bad idea. Most individual adventurers would avoid it as best as they can, because having every criminal in the area turn against you is a bad idea. Dwarven citadels. While many dwarves live among humans and other common peoples, some hold strong to the traditional way of the dwarf. These are the dwarves of the Crumbling Mountain. They live in relative isolation, far from the eyes of man or elf. Within the mountains, they carve great halls, cities, and mine for riches. They forge expensive metal into impressive tools and weapons, and inlay their gems into ornate jewelry and decorations, selling these fine items to non-dwarves. Kind of like the Elven Protectorate I talked about before, these are the more traditional dwarves. These are the kind of Tolkien dwarves. And I am going to include that women dwarves do grow and hold huge, beautiful beards, because it's such a cool aspect that I feel like so many people leave out, and I think that's boring. And I think last are we trolls, orcs, and goblins. Outcast from common society in ages long past, the green-skin elfkin have formed their own societies in the western wetlands. While hostilities have cooled greatly, they once waged a grand war. Nowadays, their complex societies often leave human travelers confused and out of their depths. Despite this, traders often brave the dangerous swamps in order to trade with them. One of their most valuable resources is their access and processing system for black powder, useful in a variety of applications and weapons. I don't have a ton decided with these guys, but I want them to kind of be one of the more foreign groups to the central area. They come from far away, and they have a bad history. There is some historical animosity between the Green Elfkin and the more common peoples. And it's not just like they're evil. It's more complicated than that. They were once unified, they were pushed away, war was waged, all of that. I also love the idea of these guys maybe having a precursor to guns. I'm not sure if I want guns themselves to exist in this setting. If they do, it'll be a super primitive form. But black powder is such a fun aspect to use. I use it in pretty much all of my D&D games. It would be pointless to not have it exist in some form here. Like I said, I want to avoid them being unambiguously evil, and especially I don't want them to be coded. If you don't know what I mean, I don't want them to appear too much as any specific culture or group. By the nature of Lego Castle, the kind of human factions are always going to appear as kind of Western European. I'm going to try and avoid making these people seem like any minority group, or especially avoiding the I know it's common to stereotype them as Arabs or as Asian, usually kind of Southwest Asian or even East Asian. I'm going to avoid that as much as I can because I think it's kind of icky. You can do it without it being super negative. I'm just going to avoid it in general. Oh, one more. Oh yeah, commoners. Commoners are just people. They live in the mixed societies. Like I said, cities tend to be very, very multicultural, lots and lots of different people living together, while towns and villages tend to be mostly one or two races. It continues the kind of vibe of things like the Shire from The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where it's a group of a bunch of hobbits together, can still exist, but the wider world is much more diverse. I mentioned them explicitly. Halfling villages tend to be built very small to fit their size, while a city would need to be able to accept humans and even larger creatures. Commoners make up a majority of the world. They take up arms to become knights, learn magic to become wizards, and set out to become adventurers. In much of the setting, the commoner races include humans, dwarves, halflings, elfkin, dragonborn, and kobolds. I may come up with a new name for them or use, decide on one. And maybe beastmen. I'm still iffy on them. I love the concept of adding beastmen here, but I'm not dead set on it. All right. Thank you for watching. This has just been a fun little stupid experiment. I'm sure there's a billion things I could do better, but I'm going to keep making these, just kind of enjoying myself. Hopefully, once I get my my old sets back, my old collection, and start working on this, I'll be able to post updates and maybe throw in some new stuff I pick up. I'll probably be picking up the 3-in-1 castle myself just to get the figures, and because I think the build's kind of interesting. Kind of update with how my ideas have changed after that. I don't have a lot of stuff, so you probably won't be getting too many physical building videos, but I am learning Bricklink. I think Bricklink is very, very fun, so maybe I'll do Bricklink time lapses or whatever. I think you'll probably be seeing more Lego from me. And I want to do more of this. I love building lore. I love writing settings and stuff. I think this will be super fun. I want to make more like this. Do deep dives on specific factions, maybe pair it with a build or something. Go really hard on little things. Tell stories. And outside of this, I do other stuff too. If you've seen my channel, I do write music. And I am working on a video for a Dungeons & Dragons game I run that I'm hoping to share really, really soon. Other than that, I'm all done. This has been a lot of fun to make. This is really just for me, but if you enjoyed it, let me know. I'd love to make more. All right. Thank you.